I would like to now invite our moderator for the session. So please help me in welcoming Ms. Aparna Piramal Raje, writer and public speaker. And very, very warm welcome to you. I would now like to invite our esteemed set of speakers, Ms. Sunali Rohra, Senior Executive Vice President, Head Government and Institutional Business, Startups and Gig Banking, HDFC Bank Limited. And warm welcome. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Bhaskar Ramesh, Director, Omnichannel Businesses, Google India. So very, very warm welcome. I would now like to invite Ms. Nruthya Madappa, Partner and Head of Growth and Capital Development, 314 Capital. Let's have a huge round of applause for her, please. Welcome, ma'am. Please help me in welcoming on stage Mr. Pravin Agarwala, Group CEO and co-founder, Betterplace Safety Solutions Private Limited. So very, very warm welcome to you. And please put your hands together for Mr. Shashank Kumar, MD and co-founder, Razorpay Software Private Limited. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to Sunali for the invitation also. So we really couldn't have had a better panel if you want to understand what's happening with the gig economy here in India today. Because we've got every aspect of this space, whether it is the tech part or the fin part, covered, and even people like me who consider themselves to be part of the gig economy. So before I jump straight into the panel, I'll just say I want to paint a picture of the gig economy. I think that we often think of people like our Uber drivers and delivery partners as being part of it. But the gig economy actually extends to white-collar workers too. So I've been saying for a long time that I've been part of this economy for the last 12 years. I consider myself to be having platforms and not employers. So I'm a writer and freelancer. So I have many publications that I work with. I'm a public speaker, so I have clients. I teach at universities, so they are also part of my portfolio. And I've been following this portfolio life for like about a dozen years, which has been obviously enabled by the digital economy. And it was interesting that this portfolio life was so well understood initially by my bank that they refused to give me a credit card. So I think this is part of the challenges that we want to understand of the gig economy today, because it brings with it a lot of independence and a lot of freedom. It's changing the way we work. It's changing our perceptions at how we look at our work and our economy. So let's turn it over first to Sunali, and you've been spearheading this for a while. What, according to you, is the gig economy?
So thanks, Aparna. I think you've started off by saying exactly what we believe. I think the gig economy is much larger than it's made out to be, which is, technically only blue collar. I think there's a lot, it's a very wide space of freelancers. We have the white collar professionals, you have all the vocational professions, you have the blue collar workers, you have pink collar workers, you also have purple collar workers, which are actually the civil engineers who have to do some work on site and some work in their offices. So if you look at the future of work, it's actually changing dramatically. And the gig economy is actually a manifestation of the future of work, which we are seeing to play out in India and growing very rapidly. I think it's already played out to a large extent in the US, where about close to 40% of the work is done by freelancers. So I think this is the future of work.
And if you had to sort of look at how big it is in terms of size or how seriously we should be taking it, why are we having this conversation today?
So I think, look, there are various estimates doing the round, right? Doing the rounds. But I think you can say safely anywhere between 30 to 50 million. It would be the number of people that you can count safely in the gig economy, organized and unorganized. When I say organized, they'd be on the platform. Unorganized, I'd say they wouldn't be part of a platform, and that makes them furthermore away from stuff, facing the kind of challenges you mentioned you face, right? So you have to look at it very, very widely, because I think lots of people want independence, and this way of work is actually giving them the freedom and the independence that they want, as well as income.
Yes, so if there is a demand for it, then let's turn to the financing side of it and the investing side of it, Nruthya. I mean, how excited would you be as a venture capitalist in this space?
Extremely. So can you hear me? Yeah, thank you for having me on this. I'm Nruthya, I'm a partner at 314 Capital. This has been a very deep thesis of ours from the very beginning, and I'll just step back to give you a sense of why, right? All of us talk about the fact that we are the youngest, probably the most technically heavy talent that is available for the world. One of our deepest and largest exports are software services, both in terms of people themselves and services itself, which are higher than how much Saudi exports oil today, right? So when you think about that, this is a very natural sort of progression on how people start thinking about and reevaluating formal, informal, part-time and freelance work on the white-collar front. But there is another reason this is extremely important. We, with the youngest population in the entire world today, have an obligation to ensure we improve the employability of this population and then also have assured employment for them at the end of it. Now, this is not, up until today, is focused on urban, elite, white-collar or blue-collar jobs. Like your sources of employment are highly concentrated in very dense urban centers today. That's changing very rapidly. The consumption story of India today spreads far beyond the 5 or 6 major cities in this country. Gender inclusion across the employment workforce or even across higher education is exploding. Actually, in the last 10 years, women's participation across higher education and employment has improved. But the way we think about work hasn't materially shifted, and neither has the infrastructure around it. So just to give you an example, right, of course we have Betterplace. I'm not going to steal the thunder of one of our portfolio companies. He'll tell you the incredible work he's doing, but we have a company called We Rise that distributes unique financial products to middle India and beyond. So this is tier 2, tier 3 India and beyond. While they design all of it, they actually distribute this and enable trust in that transaction by employing tens of thousands of freelancers who are localized, who have social connections there, and they don't sit on the company's role, but they are an incredibly integral part of how we create these products, how we distribute them, how we educate a new population onto new forms of financial services and products that are available to them. We're investors in Kuku FM, which is one of the largest audio, India-focused audio content plays in the country. Who do you think creates this content? It's thousands of freelancers who sit across the country who are enabled by extremely high-quality tech from Kuku's team that helps them pull out very, very high-quality bespoke content for this platform. We have, by the way, personally, I'm also an army wife. What do you think all of these incredibly talented women, our officers, end up marrying, but are required to relocate on a whim? What do you think the kinds of opportunities are that we have enabled for them? And that's shifting very dramatically. Again, looking a little bit further into my past, I led QMath and its expansion in India about 6 years ago. And at that point, we were going after the most highly educated homemakers who took a break for several reasons, societal constructs, their own personal, not being able to handle all of this. And there was such pathetically few opportunities at that point, and that scaled so differently today. And when we put them at the front and center of QMath and scaling and imparting this math education, you should have seen the insane quality of education being delivered by these women. So we've always had a problem of abundance on the talent front. We've had an incredible scarcity in terms of the kinds of jobs that we could enable and enlist them at. But now we're sort of sitting at the cusp of that convergence of us rethinking what work can look like, what work opportunities can look like for this new, emerging, more inclusive, expanded workforce of ours. So that's why it's very exciting to us.
Those are great examples. And so you clearly see the opportunity to scale there as much as to find these businesses that are differentiated.
Yes, but the infrastructure is still lacking, from as basic as how you get paid from somebody outside the country to how you underwrite the products across. I think Sunali will talk more about it, across lending, across insurance. Everything is linked to full-time employment today. Or even just how women have access to caregivers, and are we thinking about that? There are very, very different layers of how we need to rethink the infrastructure around this new workforce and this new form of work.
Thanks. I think you've given us a glimpse of the kinds of work that go into it. But Pravin, if I have to look at the future of work, and just to build on what Nruthya was saying, I think there's sometimes a little perception that, gig economy jobs are for people who can't get full-time jobs, who are not in a position to get those full-time jobs, or who, that is perhaps not as significant from a work point of view as the full-time jobs that we're so associated. Would you help me, navigate that? What do you think?
So I personally believe that gig was always there, right, in some form or the other. Right? domestic help is a gig worker, cook is a gig worker, and taxi driver is a gig worker. And this is there for ages, right? It was not at the forefront. The reason is that there was no technology driving this at scale in a very formal way, right? And what are the problems? There are two problems in principle, right? If I'm looking for a job, I always try to get a full-time job because there is a predictability in terms of the income that I will get, right? Whether this is 10,000 bucks or it is 50,000 bucks. But there is a number that I know what I will get at the end of the day. And similarly, from an organization point of view, I know that the person who is coming to job is coming. So there is a reliability in the system, right? And this was not possible 5 years, 10 years back in the absence of a platform. I mean, there was some kind of solutions were there, but Uber, the Olas, the Swiggies have actually created that kind of trust factor within an organization and individuals that this can work, right? And now this is expanding. And at earlier stage, we thought that gig will only work for a logistics, e-commerce, or a cab, but this is changing dramatically, right? It is changing at a speed that we can't imagine. It is changing in manufacturing, which I thought will never happen, right? And we deal in this space at scale. We never thought this will happen in BFSI, right? This is changing rapidly.
Yeah, sorry, just to interrupt, I'd love to hear an example from what you said about manufacturing, because that's definitely something we don't think of as gig work in this country.
So for example, if you look at, let's say I have a manufacturing plant, right? The big billion day is coming, right? And on an average, you need, let's say 10,000 people working on your plant in different locations. Suddenly you have a surge where you need 30,000 people, right? You do not want to hire them full-time. You want to hire them part-time. Or might be there's a specific work that you need to do. For example, the plant shutdown happens and you need to do the maintenance. You only need the people for 10 days to clear the maintenance work and then go back. You do not want to hire them full-time, which was the case in past, right? And this is changing rapidly. Most of the organizations benefit in terms of the investment they do in terms of salaries and other things and the return they get. And individuals can earn more money, right? So this is changing at a speed that we could not imagine in past. My view is, if you think of, let's say in late 90s, we had Infosys and TCS and other companies. Might be in next 5 years, 10 years, we will have Betterplace and other companies, right?
All the best.
But this is a big thing, right? Just to add on to that, the other element which is very important, that a lot of people who wanted a full-time job, there is a predictability in terms of salary, but there was also kind of data getting created that if I go somewhere, I will say I'm an employee of X company, someone will have trust on me, I'll get some insurance, I'll get some PF, ESI, and so on and so forth. I'm talking about largely the front line, right? Today, this is also possible, right? We have created an underwriting algorithm. We are disbursing loan to gig workers, which was very difficult in past, right? Because you are able to collect data at scale and create sense out of it, which was not possible earlier, right?
Yeah, and I think I'd just like to just add in here, I think while you look at scale, today I can tell you that there are a large number of platforms that are also today adding to the white collar workforce. So whether you look at a platform that was started by a former colleague of mine called Flexing It, which has, I think, the largest number of white collar workers, I think it's more than 1 million now across Asia. And there are, partners like TrueLancer, Reference, etc. So we're seeing this phenomenon not just in manufacturing, not just in, but we're seeing it across the spectrum of services. And also if you look at, I think Aparna, we spoke about this earlier, also if you look at it as India's transitioning from an agriculture economy, if you go and look at the kind of non-farm jobs, the share of non-farm jobs is today actually much higher in the semi-urban and rural, largely in the rural areas. And this is some work I did a long time ago. But even then, what was startlingly visible in that work was that the non-farm services economy, because let's remember at the end of the day, India structurally a services-led sector, has had services-led growth, unlike the Asian tigers who've had manufacturing growth. So you've actually seen the services boom, and as Pravin says, the hues are all across, and I think we have one of the people whom I'm sure you'll reach out to who's actually created an economy in itself. So I'll leave it to Bhaskar and not steal the thunder from him on this one.
I'm going to come back to you, Bhaskar, in 1 minute, but I'll just finish one sec with Pravin. I just want to go back to this issue of choice, because I think it determines how we understand this gig economy, right? So like I said, I can understand maybe somebody like me has the choice to work from home and to decide which gigs they want to work on. But the people who you just talked about, who are looking at working with, working part-time in a manufacturing plant, what is determining their choices to be a gig worker? How does it affect them socially, for example? Like, is it easy for them to get married, and do those kinds of things that all of us aspire to?
I'm already married for 25 years, so very hard to answer this question. But my view is that people make a choice, especially on the frontline ecosystem, based on the income that they can make, right? Is the salary that they can make. And there are different categories, right? People who are in the cities, people who are in the villages, there are different set of reasons. We can go into detail, but I think keeping the schedule in mind, I'm just cutting it short, that people make choice based on income. And if they can earn more income per hour, this is how people decide on the gig work.
That's great. So that's a factor which is giving them opportunities even at that level. So yeah, Bhaskar, I think that, obviously Google is central to our understanding of the digital ecosystem for all of us. But what role does it really play at the gig economy in terms of, how can the digital ecosystem really impact the economy, the gig economy?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me. And you're absolutely right. Firstly, what I echo with the panel is the fact that internet economy in itself will actually grow from where it is right now to more than 4x, 5x, right, to $1 trillion by 2030. So I don't have the exact numbers on the gig economy, but I'm sure, as Sunali is saying, if there are 50 million users already, right, of the economy, they will definitely go many-fold. What is driving this are three fundamental factors, right? Like, one is, if you look at it, we have more internet households in India than television households. We have more rural users on the internet than urban users. So the tier 2, tier 3 new internet users wanting to participate, and in the economy, their digital consumer behaviors and expectations are actually rising, right? So that's one factor. The second big factor we see emerging is the fact that many large businesses are investing heavily on digitization. And of course, the startup economy is actually booming because of, the players who are also part of the panel. And that is going to give so many more opportunities, for skilled and unskilled employees to kind of participate in it. And the third is the amazing India stack. I think is the trifecta of all these three factors is going to thrive, is making the internet thrive. Now, our role is, as we're saying, we are a proud member of making sure that we are a catalyst to this internet economy over time. And today, if a gig worker is actually looking for work, he's probably searching on Google search, and he is finding that, Betterplace, an app which gives him the right work for his skill through an app on a Play Store, reaching that place of work on, using maps because the instances are listed, and potentially learning more about that skill on YouTube, right, and getting paid through Google Pay. So I think we are an enabler to this infrastructure, and the role that we play is in three ways. Number one, we understand that language is a fundamental barrier for this economy to thrive. We have a large program which is AI enabled to see how can we solve for 100 Indian languages, right? So that the internet economy is more inclusive and participative and across different languages and different kinds of population out there. The second is really the infrastructure, right? Whether it is maps. Today, more than 900 million connections actually happen every single day on maps, and I think getting more and more of these formalization to happen is a skill there. More than 30 billion app downloads are happening in India. So the combination of Android and Play and how do you enable all this ecosystem is the second big infrastructural piece which will help more startups to come into this space and more people to kind of discover their aspects. And the third is what Sunali was also mentioning. Today we really do not talk creators in the same language as gig, you know. We have more than 40,000 plus creators with more than like 100,000 subscribers. And India is can boast of 11,000 creator channels with more than like a million subscribers, right? So the opportunity is that, but the economy for every one creator who is actually making money on it, there are tons of ecosystem. Somebody is doing editing, somebody is doing all of it. So in the recent report done by Oxford Economics, we said 750,000 direct employability was actually happened because of the creator economy in India. This was like almost like 2 years back. So there's a lot of, as internet economy expands, I think work and productivity per se is going to take a very new form in an AI first environment that we are living in. And I think this is fundamentally going to add to the gig economy to thrive.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear those numbers and to the size of that creator economy in particular. So would you say that you're developing platforms looking at different segments of the gig economy, or is it more a question of, as you said, catering to make sure that all the needs of the different languages, looking at it from a geographic perspective, from those other, these aspects that you're looking to really service this market?
No, as I said, I just want to take a step back, right? We are trying to solve for technology, right? Reducing barriers like language and like access. So solving for infrastructure so that more opportunities and more businesses can actually like thrive. As I said, whether it is in the startup accelerator programs or creator economies, I think these are all different ways of building the rails on the basis of which internet economy will thrive, digital economy will thrive, and of course more opportunities for gig will actually also happen in the process.
Thanks. So speaking of barriers, Shashank, what do you think in terms of payment services are the challenges facing the gig economy?
Even for Razorpay's origin story, right? I think we started the company with the insight that a lot of financial institutions generally build products, let's say for salaried class or for corporates. And the growth of like the startup ecosystem and then the gig economy, especially in the last 10 years, right, requires a different kind of approach, different kind of products itself. And that's something that the ecosystem needs to understand and build towards. You can't just simply copy paste like what's been working for corporates, and towards the gig workers, and expect it to function specifically, right?
Sorry, could you give me an example of that? That's a very interesting insight.
Yeah, so I think, let me talk to you about payments especially, right? Like, just the onboarding and the due diligence process for accepting digital payments, right? It's not simple, It's easier for corporates to do that, right? It's easier for startups to do that because they're funded and all. The moment you go smaller in size, which is smaller SMEs and then freelancers, right? You have to establish trust, you have to establish due diligence, and that takes effort. And the younger generation especially, right, is a bit more impatient as well. So there's a bit of an expectation mismatch between what like the financial ecosystem wants to do, the way it typically onboards customers versus what is the expectation of today's generation, right? And so you have to build products, you have to handhold, you have to set that expectation, that education in terms of how these things work. I'll give you a very specific example. One of the freelancers, came on our support and said, look, can you help me raise a compliant invoice? Because a lot of corporates have a very complex process in terms of how they want the invoice to look, where it needs to be uploaded, how they approve it, right? And then how the money finally gets disbursed sometimes in 90 days, sometimes in 180 days, right? So for a freelancer, for a gig worker, you're doing some design work, you're doing some marketing work. I think this whole process of just getting onboarded on a payment system, then raising the proper invoice, establishing trust when they are selling their services, all of these are very genuine problems, and these are not solved to a good extent, I think the ecosystem is working towards solving them. But I think for both, for the growth of the gig economy, as well as for, for the opportunity that it presents and for the opportunity that it can, the work that it can do for India. I think it's very important that we sort of solve for that, right? So from a payments perspective, I think this whole onboarding due diligence, then using the product, because again, a lot of payment products are tailored for SMEs and corporates and not for like a, single individual that is looking to, use those services. And there's a lot of, stuff on compliances and filings, especially, as you're saying, like on the export part, for example, right? Because I think the quality of people that we have, and the prices at which we can provide services makes it really attractive to export our services. And I think that's a large opportunity. Even though the ecosystem is growing, I think we are, way behind in terms of some of the other countries, let's say like a Vietnam or, other Southeast Asian economies even, right? In terms of how much we can tap into, the opportunities that are present in US and Europe. See, all of us know, right? Like there's shortage of workers in US and Europe. That is typically said for, blue collar workers. But honestly, they even lack workers for doing like, simple work, simple technology work, simple marketing work, simple writing work, designing work, right? And that's something that we can very easily fulfill because we understand that culture, we understand that language, we have the right skill sets. But that exposure is usually lacking, that sophistication in terms of using technology, whether it's payment systems or anything else, right? And that's where we need to work towards as platforms in designing that and providing that support, and at the same time figuring out how we can educate people to use those services and not just serve the India market, but also serve the broader market that exists outside India.
Yeah, I think these are really very valid points. And just to build on what all of you have been saying, first, of course, there's an opportunity that all of you see. And I think you were saying, Pravin, that how can we make sure that this gig economy is taken as seriously by us as, let's say, we took the IT industry in the 90s, right? We all got super excited by the IT industries in the 90s. And we saw this as a form of employment. We saw this as a form of global income. And obviously, many of these gig workers are also, working globally. It's not that they are just working only to serve the Indian market. They could be working globally. So what is the, to go back to what Shashank was saying, what is the mindset shift that's needed to look at this economy in that way? And to really understand that if we're trying to service this economy, it's not going to be the same rules that we use for a big corporate that we can apply here. Does anybody want to have a...
I think I completely agree, Aparna, and I think that's why we are here today, because we realize this as we see the future of work changing, and as a bank, we've taken this very seriously and actually worked on a whole set of both of not just asset products, which I'll talk about in a second, but across the entire slew of products that can be made available to a freelancer. And I think, as all my fellow panelists have said, right, I think there have been barriers at every stage. And like Shashank says, I couldn't agree more. Though lots of them are yet to be solved. And I think the explosion of exports is waiting to happen with the recent payment aggregator cross-border guidelines that have been issued by the Reserve Bank. I think we are just, the beginning is yet, I mean, this is just the start, right? You're going to see an S-curve and see it very rapidly. I mean, if I'm sitting in New York and I have somebody sitting in India whom I know, I just need to buy stuff and I have global presence, they can literally ship it, because the logistics industry today, like one of my friends who's also a freelancer was saying, the logistics are just so simple, right? It's much easier now to ship globally than it's ever been before. And if you can get paid very easily, that bingo, then why do I need to go through the whole thing? And as we solve these problems of receiving inward, which is where you're going to see a massive, massive explosion in exports, and that's exactly where the government also wants to take the economy, I think we're going to see a very, very different picture 5 years from now. And therefore, as a bank, what we've done is systematically actually spoken to about 800 to 1,000 odd people, right, across different walks of life, to understand what have been their challenges. And I'm very happy to share that the products that we've developed, whether it's a single account which can be used for both professional and personal services, whether it's giving you a credit card, even if you're new to credit, with some conditions, including, basic stuff like your residence and office address now can be the same, to getting you insurance for as little as 20 rupees a day, which is a fairly good price, to get insurance for you and your family post-COVID. To make seamless to make cross-border payments seamless, we tied up with Pioneer. We've got some, good competitive rates for our first few partners who sign on. We've solved investment, right? SIP was always about, I have a salary, I need to invest every month. We've actually worked with HDFC AMC to set up a systematic investment process whereby, for a freelancer, we know income is lumpy, you may not get paid every day. So they can actually invest when they want, how much they want, right? What we've also done is set up new structured credit products. So for digital platforms, like you said, you don't have an employee, you have a platform. For platforms and for their members, right? We have our business loans, we have our two-wheeler and auto loans, we have our gold loans, and with the new structured asset product that we've set up, it will actually make life a lot easier. And even for platforms, I think one thing that as this economy is evolving, I think which we should probably cover, and we've seen as we've done a lot of work, before coming here and launching these products, is that, it's the same philosophy at a platform. And I'm sure my friend Pravin and Bhaskar, more on the YouTube side, will say, it's always the 20% that gives you the 80%. So the same Pareto. And I think that's where we see that the structured products that we've created can actually be a huge competitive advantage for all the platforms, right? Which will allow them to provide access to credit today for people that, traditionally would have to get that credit, would probably not get that credit or get it at a very, very high cost. So I think as a bank today, we are very humbled, but we are also happy to be able to do all of this, because this is really where, the future of work is going to be. As you said, Oxford Economics, it's absolutely right. Influencers today have changed the way marketing actually works. And we're here today because of my marketing team. I mean, a lot of this work here is done by them. Now, traditionally, 10 years ago, this would have not been a marketing first kind of effort. So I think the future of work is changing. The barriers are getting dismantled. It's a journey, like you said, right? When the IT industry started, we didn't have all the answers. We've seen segments where we've seen huge potential. So IT services is one area. Professional services is another area. Traditionally, obviously, we've seen, there have been lots of chartered accountants, etc., who've had their firms. But now you look at platforms like LegalViz, right? They're actually lawyers, because imagine owning a house today. You have a house in another city, you live in one city. You want to be able to get a lawyer just to complete a transaction. How do you actually find that lawyer? It's damn tough, unless you know somebody there, right? Because these are small ticket transactions. This is not like a corporate law firm. So we're seeing this across the board, across the continuum of work. And I think that's where, as a bank, we want to come in and be able to solve these problems systematically and make sure that we also, as a result, expand financial inclusion, which has happened with Jan Dhan at an account. But now we want to build on top of it.
Thanks, Sunali. That's, a whole host and a suite of offerings that are appear to be very comprehensive, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people looking at that with a lot of interest. Anyone else wants to comment on, how they see this sector being important for India's growth, and is it something that would get us that kind of opportunity, both in terms of the numbers of people, the size of work, exports, just being able to really have a shape to this industry that maybe so far we don't have yet.
Just to add, Aparna, so one of the points that you also asked is are we serious about this change, right? I think it's a cultural change that is also happening, where the people in my generation, and I'm not that old by the way, but still in my generation, they wanted a fixed income, happy life, go back. Today's generation wants flexibility, right? They want ownership. They want to be in control of their own destiny, right? I want to come to work, I don't want to come to work. I will come today, I will not come tomorrow, right? That is a cultural shift that is happening. And because of that, this is bound to happen. The question is not whether we are serious about gig economy or not. The question is that how long the traditional economy will stay as it is, whether this is 5 years or 7 years. My strong belief is that it will not be longer than 7 years, but that is the question that we need to answer, because the new generation is coming in, older ones are getting retired, so this is bound to happen. The other thing, which I strongly believe, is that it will become very, flat in terms of world, right? So people will not be restricted to doing gig for only my city, my country. It will be happening anywhere, and that is where payments and other things will become absolutely critical. One of the estimation we did, this could add to almost 700 to 800 billion of economy in terms of the 5 trillion economy that India is targeting in next 5 years.
That's a huge figure. That's not something we can take it. And I think you say you're not very old, but even I'm old enough to remember how we once thought of the traditional economy as being the manufacturing economy and the new economy being the IT and the tech world, and I think we're at that new barrier again when that has become the traditional world and this is the new world.
Just to add to that, I think Pravin said the jobs will come from everywhere. The workers will come from everywhere too, with very different contexts, very different things, problem statements, etc. This is going to really explode what the workforce itself will look like in terms of age, gender, inclusion from cities, educational backgrounds, etc. So it's a very exciting time, and we haven't even begun to start solving the problem statements for each of these.
And just to say from what you said is that I think what we need to do is to lose the stereotype that it's just one kind of worker, because this is reflecting from what we all said, everything from a lawyer to a professional services person to a knowledge, a blue collar worker. So that wide spectrum. Bhaskar.
No, I think, as I say, this is India's decade, right? So I'm really excited with the future that all of us are actually excited about. So I think if I really look at the way MSMEs are actually progressing in India right now, the SMBs actually have two challenges, right? One is quality and the second is capital, access to capital. I think with the digital infrastructure improving, the quality of what they offer, the skill sets that they have are really matching up, no matter where they're coming from, right? And as you're saying, this is not limited to India, work can come from anywhere in the world. But what they definitely need is access to capital, and I'm really excited with what Sunali and many other banking ecosystem is trying to do, because you started the conversation saying that you didn't get a credit card, right? So there'll be millions of them, and where probably credit should be given based on their history, cash flow, rather than credit worthiness based on a certain system, right? And all this, and we see that a lot of demand, almost like 4x, 5x higher demand on lending, digital interest actually than what actually gets lent, today. So there is a lot of opportunity there. Opportunities like credit on UPI, and maybe a lot of investment across the ecosystem on upskilling, reskilling, and making sure that they actually have that badge value, on when they learn something, they have an identity. So a lot of effort needs to be done. We are at like really, really, really early in this journey, and pretty exciting. And if internet is bicycle to the mind, like AI is going to be probably like a rocket ship to productivity per se. So hopefully a lot will happen.
Yeah, it'll be great to be here 5 years from now and see what we're all saying. Shashank, you want to close it?
Yeah, I think, as everybody said, like we are at the start of the journey, right? So if I just look at it, the growth of the gig economy, I think designing a set of, technology services, right, including payments and everything else, designing a set of financial services, right, so that they are very well enabled and very tailored to the different kind of gig workers, whether it's white collar, blue collar, or gray collar, right? And then the third part is investing a lot in upskilling and reskilling, right? Because we can really unlock a huge, workforce and really enable them to control their destiny and figure out like how they can contribute, their services, be like a really great citizen in terms of, driving the productivity in the economy, right? I think these three factors, I think we need to keep driving that, keep measuring that, and keep seeing like how do we progress on it, as an ecosystem. I think, in 5 years, 10 years, it'll deliver huge upside for the country and the economy.
That's great. It's great to see your optimism. Okay, we're heading towards the end of the panel, but I think we have enough time to squeeze in a quick rapid fire round, which I hadn't told you guys about. So starting with Shashank, one word to describe the gig economy. Phenomenal. Nruthya?
Accelerating.
Accelerating. Yeah. Bhaskar?
Future.
Future.
Empowerment.
I think that's the future.
It's the future. Great. Well, I'm so glad to you for being part of us and for being part of this future work that we're seeing for India. I think it's a fabulous time, and I hope that you can participate in this part of the economy. So I'll leave it to you now, Sunali.
Thank you. And I'd just like to say thank you, everyone, for being a wonderful audience. Just before we start, we'd just like to launch our products. And I think I'd just like to say a couple of things as we go. I'm very happy to hear my colleagues on the panel talk about upskilling, and I want to tell you that we've actually now got the Giga credit card as well, which has very, very good offers for upskilling and fantastic courses, stuff from Madappa, etc., that courses where you can get these offers. So let me just start saying, let me just tell you that we are very excited. We're very, very happy to be launching these products. And we would like you to help us take them everywhere, because every one of us has a freelancer in our lives. So as I'd like to say, each one, bank one. Thank you.